At 8:30 p.m. on October 17th, 2006, New Orleans police received a distressing phone call from a member of staff at the Omni Royal Orleans Hotel. They were calling to report a self-inflicted death. One of their guests had jumped from the hotel's rooftop bar, dropping more than 7 floors onto the garage below. And as you can likely imagine, the prognosis for this guest was not good. He had died shortly after impact. Detectives quickly determined who this man was. That is because, before jumping, he had placed a small plastic bag in his front pocket. Within this plastic bag was a key, a note, and his dog tags, indicating that he likely used to be part of the army. Now, the details behind his death were already seemingly ominous. But when officers opened the letter to look at what was written inside, they realized that this was only the beginning of a terrible and tragic story. So, the big question that all of you have here is, what was written in that note? Well, after unfolding the paper, officers realized that the note said, "This is not accidental. I had to take my own life to pay for the one I took. You need to visit my apartment, found at 826 North Rampart Street." Detectives knew that they would be in for a gruesome discovery after reading that letter. But who the victim was, or whereabouts in the apartment they could be found, was not yet clear. However, they did have a name and an address to work with, so with that in mind, they prepared themselves for whatever awaited at North Rampart Street. Dog tags retrieved from the man's body named him as 28-year-old Zach Bowen, and soon enough it was confirmed that he did in fact serve in the military. And as for his victim, well, things were not looking good for his partner. No one had heard from her in over 12 days. And so, logic would tell you it was she he was referring to. But saying that, before we get into what officers found in Zach's apartment, let's first look at who he and his partner were. Beginning with Zach Bowen, he was born on May 15th, 1978 in Bakersfield, California. From the beginning, his childhood seemed to be riddled with depression. Unfortunately, Zach struggled to deal with his low self-esteem and mood throughout the years, and this would also follow him into teenagerhood. When he was 12 years old, Zach moved to New Orleans to live with his father, switching high schools in the process. Unfortunately, his grades were nothing special, but he didn't seem to mind so much about that. And so, at the age of 18, that is when Zach began to work as a bartender. He felt comfortable in this environment, and although the pay wasn't too great, it was a relatively easy and sociable job.